Sometimes we find ourselves living vicariously through others. Writer and director Mike Donahue took one of those encounters and created an enlightening short called Troy, screening at this year's Sundance Film Festival. The film follows a couple living in a compact apartment where the walls are thin and one particular neighbor has a very active sex life. Tonight, Mike sits down with us to discuss the film.
So the first question I want to ask is, where did all of this come from? Where the idea to pretty much show the whole living vicariously through a person you may not know come from?
So it is in part inspired by like a real situation. The two people I came up with the story idea with and sort of like beated it out and structured it with, Jen Silverman and Dane Lafferty, are folks I work with a lot in the theater. They're like very close friends and collaborators. And there is an apartment in the past where there was like a neighbor who similarly had really loud, raucous sex at all hours of the day. So the situation, like the setup, kind of was inspired by that idea, but these ideas of like a couple who are so sort of like comfortably settled in a routine, maybe overly so. And it's not like unhealthy, but you sort of like fall into like a rhythm and you start to live in like a more narrow bandwidth of experiences, and like how profoundly lonely that can start to feel and how much you can start to crave something to kind of wake that up and shake that up for you. And I don't know, I think especially in cities like New York where we're like stacked on top of each other, you can't help but be like incredibly intimately involved in other people's very raw personal emotional moments sometimes. And I know that's been my experience of the city. I've watched people cry on the subway, and I myself have cried on the subway. I find myself starting to attach to those people and like writing whole narratives in my head that maybe don't have anything to do with who they are, but it's given me something in that moment that I needed. So uh, they've sort of these have always been things that I've been interested in.
I have to say, like you had some names in your film that I thought,
These are
wow,
great.
yeah. So I thought that was cool. As it comes to the leads, where did the casting choices come from? Did you get to handle that as well, or did you leave that up? I know sometimes with filmmakers they kind of wear multiple hats. So did you leave that up to someone else, or did you handle it yourself?
We wrote this short with all of these actors in mind. They're all
Mm.
folks that we've worked with in the theater before, like Adina Verson, who plays Taya, and Dana Delaney were both in this play that Jen Silverman and I did in New York a couple of years ago called Collective Rage, a play in Five Betties. And we started working on the script for the shorts shortly after that, and we're like immediately clear that we wanted to write something for the two of them. Dylan Baker was like the first director I ever assisted when I got out of school. Mike Braun is somebody that I've overlapped with in grad school and have like desperately wanted to work with for years and never gotten to. Philip James Brandon was somebody that had done plays with Jen up at Williamstown, who I had always been a huge fan of. So they were just all people that we admired.
So how is it to be showing it at Sundance this year? How does that feel?
Honestly, it is so humbling and overwhelming. Like I never in my wildest dreams thought that this is I've been a theater director for the last like 11, 12 years. This is the first short I've ever made. I had like zero expectations that like this would ever happen for us. And we've also been really blessed to have like a healthy festival run for the last 6 months. Like we're not even in a premiere for Sundance. Like we started at Tribeca last June. We played at Outfest, and played at the Ford, like outside with like, it's like a 1,200 seat house. And we're part of a comedy evening that they did, and Margaret Cho headlined. So I feel so very lucky that we're getting to do it.
Did you find creating a film short a little bit more relaxing than handling a full-on theater production?
I loved it. It's I think the biggest difference for me actually was the work with the actors, because in theater, you're like taking a first pass through something and you're finding all of this and you're figuring out how it lives and where the heartbeat of it is. And then you come back in a second pass and suddenly all of that is dead. And you have to do all of this like detective work together to figure out what impulses were in place, what framework was in place, and in the first round to make everything kind of fire. You then have to do a later pass where you figure out, okay, if I'm not feeling it tonight, like what do I do to fake it so that we still tell the story for the audience, even if I'm not living it, it's fully at that night. But you just have to come in and like capture the moment once, and then you never have to worry about it. You can forget about it. You don't have to think about why it worked or what was interesting about it. It just like goes away and you move on. And that was very liberating and exciting. So I loved it.
How can people find out more about the film and you to learn more about what you do?
Sundance has an online like virtual component. So if you go to Sundance, you can get tickets to watch like a ton of their virtual offerings and see everything from home. So that's a great way to do it. My best advice is to like go to Sundance's website or like seek me out and like DM me for the screener.
Well, Mike, thank you for taking time out this morning to talk with me. Congratulations on your being a part of the festival for this year, and who knows, maybe I'll be able to see you.
Yeah, I hope that we cross paths while we're both out in Utah next week.
Definitely. All right.
It's lovely.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye.